He's a philosopher at Leiden University and the Munich Center for Mathematical Philosophy. He completed his PhD in philosophy in 2009 at the Australian National University and has bachelor's degrees in science, mathematics, and arts, philosophy, from the University of Queensland. His academic research is at the intersection of psychology and philosophy and focuses on wisdom, uncertainty, meditation, yoga, and psychedelics, of course. He has published research articles in many top journals in philosophy and held academic appointments at several universities worldwide. His book, Psychedelic Experience, Revealing the Mind, will be published with Oxford University Press in 2023. He has recently been awarded a 3-year grant by the Templeton Foundation to work on the project Mystical Entropy, which will use the concept of entropy to unify the recent science of mystical experiences with traditional philosophical systems of mysticism. I'm pleased to welcome you to this conference with your talk, Psychedelic Experience, Revealing the Mind.
Yes, so in the introduction, my name is Aidan Lyon. I'm a philosopher living in Amsterdam and working at Leiden University. And today I'd like to present to you a slice of my book that's coming out, Psychedelic Experience, Revealing the Mind. Before I jump into it, I'd like to say a little bit about why I wrote the book in the first place. There are many reasons, but one big reason was that a few years ago, several years ago now actually, I had a profound mystical experience in which I was blasted with the insight that, keep going, or is it?
I think you just continue at the thing. Should be back? Yep.
Okay. Great. Yes, so I was blasted with this insight that it would be a good idea to ask this very basic but fundamental question. What is a psychedelic experience? What is this goddamn thing? It's clearly very, very important. But we also know that it can be dangerous. And it's somehow spiritual, but that annoyed some spiritual people, right? Because they say, no, these drug experiences are not what we're doing when we're meditating or praying or whatever. So what is this experience? We've got some ideas about like what psychedelics are doing to the brain. They're clearly doing something very interesting to the brain. Something clearly interesting is happening when we have these experiences, but we don't really know what's going on. So, in my opinion, in order to answer this question, we have to do at least two things. The neuroscience is great. We should definitely continue doing that. But we have to do these two things. One, we have to have these experiences. And two, we have to think clearly about them. And I think it's very hard to think clearly about these experiences, partly because they're messing with the system that's trying to think at all. Okay, so this is what philosophy does. Philosophy comes in and brings clarity to confusing, ambiguous, overwhelming ideas and concepts. So to get into that, what I'm going to do is go way back in history to the 50s, to this time when the psychiatrists Humphrey Osmond and Aldous Huxley were talking about what to name these substances that we're so fascinated by. And in a letter to Huxley, Osmond wrote, "It is absurd to label these substances as psychotomimetics," the idea that the experiences that they induce mimic psychosis. And the reason why he thought that was absurd was that because there's clearly more going on with psychedelics than just the psychosis-like aspects. Similar point holds for calling them hallucinogens. So they're looking for a new name that would capture the essence of the experience. The name should have a clear meaning, be reasonably easy to spell and pronounce, and not be too like some other name. And then he goes through a bunch of options. And after considering all the options, he concludes, so far psychedelics, mind manifestors, seems the most promising. Psychedelics seems unambiguous, not loaded with old associations, and clear. So this is really good. This is really nice. He introduced a new technical term with it clearly referring to a concept of this, like revealing the mind. And this would help advance our thinking about these experiences. Unfortunately, 60s counterculture happened, and the war on drugs happened, and culture took over, and now the word psychedelic could mean almost anything. Often means like mind-bending, or far out, or whatever. Or what's increasingly common, particularly in scientific circles, is that we're using the name just to refer to the substances, and we forgot about the experiences. So in the book, I advocate an experience-first understanding of psychedelics. We go back to this original understanding of this meaning of the word psychedelic. It comes from the ancient Greek word psyche, which is often translated as mind, but it also has these other important translations or interpretations which are very important: soul, spirit, or self. For now, I'll just stick to the word mind. It's kind of safer territory, but we shouldn't forget these other interpretations as well. Okay, and then delos is the root of delic, and that means to reveal, to make clear, to visible, or to manifest. So putting them together, we get psyche and delos, psychedelic, mind revealing. A psychedelic experience is a mind revealing experience. When we take that experience first based approach to thinking about this topic, what we do is that we're kind of inverting our usual concepts and cleaning them up. And why that's important is because concepts are like lenses on experience. If you've got murky or confused concepts, then you're not going to understand the experiences that you're talking about. Concepts are like lenses. They put things into focus with clarity. And you can see Osman and Huxley were talking about this back in the 50s. For example, in another letter, Osman wrote to Huxley, "I can't see any point in considering an experience of the other derived from epilepsy, schizophrenia, starvation, flagellation, vitamin deficiency, the reduced environment, dervish dancing, yogic practices, more or less valuable than one derived from hashish, soma, peyote, ayahuasca, Wayson's new ones, or for that matter, mescaline, LSD, 25, the list is really long. It is all one to me. The whole point is whether the experience justifies the risk, discomfort, or time involved, and whether its fruits are good or evil." So let's think about the experiences first. When we do that, we open up the range of things that can count as psychedelic interventions. So how you might want to have a psychedelic experience? Take a psychedelic. That might be a good way to do it. After all, that's why we're calling these substances psychedelics. But we should be mindful that that's not necessarily the best way to have a psychedelic experience. It may be a very reliable way for a large percentage of the population, but there are other people, and there are other methods, and those methods may be more suitable for those people. Other substances can function like psychedelics. Indeed, drinking black coffee can be psychedelic. Here's an example. The mathematician Henri Poincaré, in 1904, was writing about his mathematical creativity. And in this chapter about creativity, he writes, "One evening, contrary to my custom, I drank black coffee and could not sleep. Ideas rose in crowds. I felt them collide until pairs interlocked, so to speak, making a stable combination. It seems in such cases that one is present at his own unconscious work, made partially perceptible to the overexcited consciousness, yet without having changed its nature." He's describing a psychedelic experience. I have once I've made this point out, several friends have come up to me and said, like, they don't drink coffee because of this. It's too much for them. So for some people, coffee can function as a psychedelic. Okay, here's another one. This would be very familiar to maybe all of you. You're minding your own business, and then you smell something, a smell from your childhood, and bam, you've got a memory flashback. This memory that like seems like it was lost, it's like of a distant time in your childhood, is suddenly there and full, like very vivid, it floods your conscious experience. That's a psychedelic experience. It's the revelation of an old memory. Mind you, we have those during with psychedelics as well, right? Another way, which I'll be talking about a lot, is the practice of meditation is another way to have a psychedelic experience. So here's a really nice description. There are many different kinds of meditation practices, and we could talk forever about them. So I'm just going to give a very, very simple description of what meditation is about. And it's this description by Steve Jobs that I think is really nice because it highlights how meditation can be psychedelic. I've bolded the psychedelic bits. If you just sit and observe, you will see how restless your mind is. Right now you can't, you're not aware of that, but if you just sit, that will be revealed to you. If you try to calm it, it only makes it worse. But over time, it does calm, and when it does, there's room to hear more subtle things. That's when your intuition starts to blossom. You start to see things more clearly and be in the present more. Your mind just slows down, and you see a tremendous expanse in the moment. You see so much more than you could see before. Okay. So the serious meditators in the audience will know that this is a psychedelic experience, what he's referring to. This state that you can find yourself in after practicing meditation seriously. It's clearly a psychedelic experience. And certain practices of meditation have the notion of revelation packed into them, right? So I think people are becoming increasingly familiar with Vipassana meditation. Vipassana means something like special seeing or insight meditation. Okay, so you could use a psychedelic, drink some coffee, smell something, practice meditation. You could also do yoga. You could also create something. In the book, I go through how all of these can also be inducing psychedelic experiences. You can think of this as like a menu. You can scroll forever. There's just so many ways to have these experiences. Okay, let me just take my time. Good. Some of you will have an objection. I know because I've heard it many, many times. Doesn't this entail that all experiences are psychedelic? The idea behind this objection is that psychedelics are special. And smelling something or drinking coffee, it's not special in the way that psychedelics are. So, great. So the objection is, it seems like you just redefined the word, it's just semantics. This is why we shouldn't let philosophers in the building. We had a good word and you've messed it up. It now applies to everything. It's useless. I don't think that's right, but for the sake of discussion, let's assume that's true, that all experiences are psychedelic. I don't think that trivializes the word because of two important points. One, psychedelic experiences come in degrees. So we can say that, some experiences are more psychedelic than others. And so we can say what's special about psychedelics is that they make experiences that are very psychedelic. Right? Drinking coffee may be just mildly psychedelic for some people. And they also come in kinds. I'll explain how that works in a moment. And so that's another way we could make psychedelics special. They produce a certain kind of psychedelic experience. All right, so some experiences are more psychedelic than others. There's the degrees to which an experience is psychedelic. So imagine you pick a random person off the street and give them mushrooms. They're gonna have the kind of quintessential psychedelic experience. We're just guessing. In that experience, they may have memory flashbacks, and that may be incredibly therapeutic for them, for example. They will have memory flashbacks that are like the flashbacks that we get when we smell something, but kind of way more intense, way more enveloping, taking more time, more consuming of conscious experience. So there's a difference here, but it's a difference in degree. It's not a difference in kind. It's a bit like the difference between regular people and billionaires. It's a very big difference, but it's just a difference in number. It's a difference in degree. We can have experiences that are even less psychedelic than this. Here's an example of that, what I call a tip of the tongue experience. So we've all experienced this as well. You're talking, and then for some reason you can't remember a word that you know. You can feel it in the moment that you know the bloody word. It's frustrating. Let's take a quick detour on that point. If a psychedelic experience is a mind-revealing experience, what is the opposite kind of experience? The opposite would be a mind-concealing experience, the opposite of revelation. Let's call that a psychocryptic experience. Cryptic from kryptos, to conceal, the sort of thing that we're talking about in cryptography. And let's distinguish that from a psychocryptic state. In a psychocryptic experience, you're aware of a psychocryptic feature or aspect of your mental state. And by the way, we're all in psychocryptic states right now. The argument for that is, it's possible that you could have a psychedelic experience right now. So if it's possible, then there must be something concealed. If you could reveal something, there must be something concealed right now. So we're all in psychocryptic states right now. A psychocryptic experience is an awareness of that. That's what's going on with the tip of the tongue phenomenon. You're aware that you can't access part of your mind for the moment. But it's a very, very small part of the mind. It's just one word, right? But that's a psychocryptic experience. It's concealed for whatever reason from you in that moment. And of course, what happens is that once you give up trying to remember the word and you relax, it pops into your awareness. You're like, that's the word. That's a psychedelic experience. It's a revelation of something that was concealed. But I think it's the smallest psychedelic experience. I don't think I've been able to think of a smaller one. Okay, it's just one word, right? Very different from what's going on out here when we take mushrooms. But same sort of thing. Okay, and meditation, maybe it's somewhere in the middle here. It's not too important because actually what I want to talk about now, we did the degrees, I want to do the kinds, how these two interventions may produce psychedelic experiences of different kinds. We think of the process of revelation a bit like a mirror. When you have a psychedelic experience, it's showing something to you about yourself that you didn't know. It's like looking in a mirror and then seeing you've got like a spot on your shirt, something like that, right? It's a revelation. It's new information coming to you. But not all mirrors are perfectly accurate representations of us. They can distort us. They can give a distorted image of what we are. Psychedelics can do the same thing. They can reveal things to us, but they can also distort through the experience or by changing the mind in the process of revelation, things about ourselves. They're not perfectly accurate. Cool. So we can think of these two sort of features of psychedelic experiences. They could be increasingly novel, so more and more surprising or like deeply revelatory content about yourself, or they could be clear, more clear, right? Bringing more clarity to the mind. These are two ways of having psychedelic experiences, and the further you get away from this origin point, the more psychedelic the experience would be. So psychedelics would tend to push you over here. By and large, this is just a rule of thumb. And meditation, again, by and large, if you picked a random person off the street and got them meditating, they would start bringing clarity to their mind, but it may not be like massively revelatory in the way that psychedelics are. So we've got this little map, and now we can do things like think about what would happen if we brought more novelty to our meditation practice, and what would happen if we brought more clarity to our psychedelic experiences. In fact, we could potentially use these interventions together to get the best of both worlds. Use psychedelics for meditation to go deeper into the mind and bring more novelty, and use meditation with your psychedelic sessions or therapy or trips or whatever to bring more clarity to the experiences. As you do that, you're moving further away from the origin and you're having an even more psychedelic experience. What does that look like? You're going to have to read the book. Sorry, I don't have time. All right, let's come back to the point about concepts. So we've got a few concepts on board now. I want to give some examples of how they can bring clarity to topics that we care about. So here's some puzzles or confusions that we've been having. Why do psychedelics and meditation both induce mystical experiences? In fact, this is a bit of a controversy. People have argued that that's not true. But I think a lot of people would agree with that statement, that they do. Why? That's quite weird, right? Like, taking a psychedelic and meditating, those are quite different things, right? They look like hippie flipping at Burning Man and meditating in a Zen monastery at the top of a mountain in Japan. They look like very different activities, but they're somehow producing the same kind of experience. What's going on there? Why do they have synergistic effects? Why do psychedelics facilitate increases in mindfulness? That's a weird crossover effect. I've argued that meditation can induce psychedelic experiences, so it goes both ways. Here's a proposition. I can't really argue for it now because I don't have time, but being mindful is the opposite of being in a psychocryptic state. That gives us a relationship between mindfulness and psychedelic experiences that's conceptual. The relationship is a bit like you're rushing to an appointment, but you're rushing, and you've lost your keys. So you're frantically searching for your keys. And then finally, you find your keys. You have a key-revealing experience. That's a psychedelic experience, like a psychedelic experience. Okay, contrast that with you're very mindful of where your keys are. You haven't lost them. Maybe they're not in your awareness right now, but you know where they are. You could easily go get them if you wanted to. That's being mindful. That's the relationship between having a psychedelic experience and being mindful. To become more mindful, you have to resolve some of the psychocryptic features and aspects of your mental state. That transformation involves having an experience that's psychedelic to a degree that's in proportion to the size and speed of the transformation. We can talk about that later if you want. But one nice thing about this is that these transformations don't have to involve psychedelic experiences. So the debates and controversies that we're having around things like psychoplastogens interestingly fit in here. There may be ways to be increasing that mindfulness by introducing the plasticity in a kind of subtle, gentle way that doesn't involve a transformative experience. Other practices like hatha yoga, the physical practice of yoga, may be like this as well. You're working on the mind, but in a gradual way. All right, final thought to wrap things up. Much has been made of the psychedelic history of philosophy. So people have been arguing that, say, the roots of ancient Greek philosophy, this is Socrates, by the way, maybe 1 minute late. I'm doing well. On time. And so people have been looking to the archaeological evidence to make arguments that they were, drinking kykeon during the Isilian mysteries, and that was an LSD-like substance, maybe from ergo. The evidence is not entirely clear. It's definitely suggestive. But here's another way of considering the psychedelic history of philosophy. Let's look to the works of the philosophers from that time. When we look at Plato's dialogues, we see all sorts of psychedelic techniques and explicit references to psychedelic and psychocryptic experiences. There are many big concepts in these works, but here are some of the big ones that are particularly relevant for us: anamnesis, acrasia, elanchus, aporia, eros. Very, very briefly, anamnesis is the lost wisdom that we have when we've fallen down into this mortal world, according to Plato. Acrasia is what happens when we continue into this world with that forgetfulness. It's when we start doing things that are bad for us, even though we know that they're bad for us, right? This is where addiction, right, and obsessive behaviors and whatever can appear. Elanchus is the Socratic method, that questioning that Socrates is famous for. This is the constant clarifying of concepts. What is truth? What is beauty? What is love? What is a psychedelic experience? Aporia is the profound state of openness and uncertainty that you have to pass through in order to be able to begin reclaiming this lost knowledge. And eros is the drive or the force, the passion, the love for wisdom that you need to be able to pursue all these things in the face of all the adversity in your life, all the setbacks that come away. These are major concepts in these works, and it's clearly about what we're thinking about when we're talking about things like psychedelics and meditation. So philosophy is psychedelic through and through. That's why so many mystical traditions have philosophical systems and why they distinguish between wisdom and knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aidan, for your very interesting presentation. We have some minutes left for questions from the audience. I will walk around with the microphone so that our online participants can listen as well, and maybe we also have some questions from the online audience. None yet. Okay, so is there a question in the audience? Yep.
Would you say that you could also describe the words psychedelic and psychocryptic with an expanse or diminishment of consciousness?
It's a really good question, and I go into that in the book as well. I think this is the standard way of thinking about psychedelic experiences, that it's a revelation of something that's unconscious to the conscious awareness. But that's one particular division of the mind. What we're looking for is somehow the mind is hidden from itself, right? And to solve that problem, basically since St. Augustus, we've had this line between the conscious and the unconscious to make sense of that. But it's not the only line, right? We could think of if the unconscious has sort of modular structures to it, so some bits are prevented from talking to other bits, then a psychedelic experience may involve the change in consciousness that happens when those modules start talking to each other. For example, that may be what synesthesia experience is. When two sensory modalities that don't normally talk can suddenly talk to each other, and then something weird happens in conscious experience.
Why would we even want to reveal the mind?
Yes, good question. We don't always want to reveal it, right? Like right now, I don't want my childhood revealed to me, in painstaking detail. But in the right circumstances, in the right context, it can be fruitful to have your mind revealed to you, because all this unconscious stuff can be driving your behavior, thinking, experience in ways that you don't like. So usually the way you would stumble into this stuff is that there's something about yourself that you don't like, you want to change, right? So maybe that, you know, in the cases of psychedelic therapy, it would be addiction to a substance, for example. And you can't get out of that trap. And so the idea is revealing the mind may help that by, for example, revealing what the triggers are for the addiction, or the childhood trauma that's driving the avoidance behavior, or something like that.
To reduce aggression or increase integrity?
Sorry?
To reduce aggression, what you mentioned, or increase integrity?
Yes, so if the experience, if you're working with it appropriately and integrating it in your life, and you know there's that discipline structure around it, then yes, it can start reducing aggression. Yeah.
One last question.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, if you think of the epistemic value of psychedelic experiences only as self-knowledge, or also about knowledge about the world. For example, maybe I could think about relationships to other people, and there could be knowledge revealed to me of why other people behave the way they do.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, so there's two ways to understand that. One, you're revealing to yourself beliefs that you may have about other people and how they're interacting with you, right? So a very common thing is we all think people are thinking more about us than we actually are, right? Most people don't care about what you're doing, right? So that can be revealed to you. You can see that you're kind of overthinking how people are thinking about you. That can happen, but then also I think your like the genuine connection that you're capable of having with people can also be revealed, and that's a rather different kind of revelation.
Okay, sadly, we now have to give time to our next presenter to prepare everything and for you to change rooms if you wish. And thank you very much once again, Aidan, for your interesting presentation.